a huge amount of our clientele looks at our Instagram and looks at our presence online in a way that, is more important now than probably ever before. And so that's a huge part of it. Not all winemakers or people who like to be in vineyards immediately want to be in front of people. It's a little bit like taking the chef out of the kitchen. Some chefs are ready for that and some are definitely not.
Hey guys, this is Sid Patel, CEO of Beverage Trade Network and Sommeliers Choice Awards. I'm here with David Keck, Master Sommelier and Winemaker. So we're going to talk about a role of a winemaker today, especially some of the challenges that many of you are facing if you are a winemaker. We're going to see that, and then we also will see how can winemakers come out more in sales and distribution and start building that awareness for the people who are selling for them, right? So David, thanks for joining me here.
It's a pleasure. Good to see you.
Great, good to see you. Let's start with your role pretty much. Just give us a little context about your journey being a master sommelier to winemaker. How did that happen?
Sure. So I left a restaurant group in Houston, Texas in February of 2020, which was a very interesting time to depart the restaurant business, and moved back to my home state of Vermont, where I ended up taking over what is actually the oldest commercially planted vineyard, or one of the oldest commercially planted vineyards in Vermont.
Nice.
And 2020 was an interesting time to get into the winemaking side of things, but it was a great year to be in the vineyard as opposed to in restaurants.
Yeah.
And we produced our 2020 vintage, and now we're in the 2024 growing season, so our 5th growing season there. And we have a little winery called Stella 14 Wines in Cambridge, Vermont, which is a burgeoning metropolis of about 3,000 people.
Very nice. So let's go on. Two hats here. One is the winemaker, the maker.
Sure.
And how are you seeing the landscape today? What kind of challenges you're facing as a maker? Yeah. What kind of consumer behaviors, like non-alcoholic to things like that? So Give me a little rundown on how you're seeing that thing.
Yeah, well, I think we're in one of the most interesting times as far as what is available in the market. And I think the consumers are overall more adventurous than they've ever been before. So working in definitely an up-and-coming region. We've got only 170 acres planted in Vermont. We're looking at, a very small, very relatively unknown growing region. But I think right now this is the most exciting time for small regions. I think growing grapes is extremely challenging no matter what anyone tells you. And the climate isn't helping anyone. Last year we lost 90% to frost. This year, we've seen huge frost issues already in France, Spain, Germany, and then between fires in other parts of the world, I think we are seeing a constantly evolving climate. Wow. And so from a grape growing perspective, our need to be flexible and just kind of take whatever we're given is utmost. And we work with hybrid varieties that are much more resilient in that way, and that I think is really
so that's helpful. How you're adapting a little bit as well.
Well, our climate requires us to work right now with cold hardy hybrids, but I think a lot of people are starting to move that direction in regions where there is a lot of volatility. I don't think Pinot Noir is going away anytime soon, but I think we are by necessity needing to diversify what we're doing in the vineyards, and so that's interesting.
How about the export markets or the countries or some of the markets where you're seeing opportunity, or are you still focusing? Most of the U.S. winemakers, let's say if the question was them, are they still focusing, do you think, just in the U.S., or are you seeing some other markets?
Well, I think something that was learned a lot, and I look to a lot of my colleagues who've been in this a lot longer than I have from the producing side of things, but COVID definitely, and that basically from 2020 moving forward, everybody looked a lot more to direct consumer sales.
Okay.
And that's the best margin for a winery by far. And so I think there was a strong push to build that personal relationships and do direct to consumer sales. I think also looking at distribution and exportation in a much more personal way, because as we look at the non-alcoholic movement and a movement, RTDs are massive, right? The ready-to-drink cocktail scene is really is huge, and so I think looking at wine, remembering that wine is very much a personal and agricultural product, and that the best way to sell wine is to talk about it and to tell the stories of the people who make it. That hasn't changed, and that's something that focused on a lot as a sommelier, and now as a winemaker, the need for me to talk about our wines with people personally and to sort of proselytize for ourselves to some extent is all the more apparent and necessary.
Okay. So let's just go there now. Next one, right? Like role of a winemaker as a marketer.
No.
And brand awareness or influencer, let's just call that word as well, right?
Sure.
So what comes to your mind? Like what all you are doing and can a winemaker do in the time that you guys have?
So I'm very grateful that my fiance Lauren is a full-time geologist and works, but she also comes and works in the vineyard a lot and does a much better job than I do of being on social media and working on the Stella 14 Instagram and things like that. And I think a huge amount of our clientele looks at our Instagram and looks at our presence online in a way that, you know, is more important now than probably ever before. And so that's a huge part of it. Not all winemakers or people who like to be in vineyards immediately want to be in front of people. It's a little bit like taking the chef out of the kitchen. Some chefs are ready for that and some are definitely not. And I think it's switching hats has proven maybe not challenging, but just a different different thing for me. Because when you're in the vineyard, it's an internal process.
True. I mean, you are just in that art mode and making mode, right? Like, so you're not in the mode of a salesmanship or public
100%.
speaking or this and that.
Yeah, it's very different.
But still, you know, on what passive things one can do, let's say on the website, to put a nice bio, pictures of winemakers, brochures on stories. Like where else do you think, telling the story of the winemaker helps? And I'm sure you agree that
Absolutely.
their face more and more does help overall in the credibility, right?
Well, I think, you know, as I said, we're in the time when those personal stories need to be in front of people and that buying wine should be a very personal process. And so making that easier for our consumers becomes all that much more crucial, right? So that they see the face, they see me, they see Lauren, they see our dogs. People know our dogs better than they know us at this point, but that's part of the story. And they know that when they open that bottle with their friends, they have something.
They can see that personality in that bottle, that, okay, these guys are like this. And
they know that we're there, that it's a product that we produce, right? That we grow, that our sweat, blood, and tears are in that thing as opposed to a thing created by a company somewhere that's a sort of faceless object. So adding our personalities as much as we can to the product we create is huge. We thankfully have a wonderful label designer as well, Jason Torres, who lives in Oregon now. And, I think he expresses our personality nicely in the labels. It's a huge part of what we do because there are times when our bottle's on a shelf and nobody has the faintest idea who we are or where we're going.
So let me ask you on the little bit on the competitions side of things as well. As a winemaker, you got a medal in any of the competition, for example. What kind of ways or tips do you have to sort of build that traction upon, or how can you use it to your advantage to show more sales or get more new customers and things like that?
Yeah, it's interesting. I think that medals, scores, criticism of any variety is helpful. It's always helpful, right? It's just interesting to me, having been on the sommelier side and then working in distribution and importation and now on the winery side, who that information is important to. And I don't always get it right. And I think that having scores and having medals from competitions available, it has proven amazingly influential to me in the way that I've sold wine in the past in ways that I wouldn't expect, whether it be a distributor that I'm speaking with about a winery that I'm importing and all of a sudden the 95 points at a certain competition and suddenly their eyes kind of open up and it might be a distributor from whom I hadn't expected that to be the response necessarily. But I think anything along those lines validates the wine to many people in different ways.
Cool. Any closing remarks for our amazing winemakers out there?
No, I think keep doing what you're doing. Good luck growing this season. I mean, I know in the Northern Hemisphere anyway, we're cranking along and full speed ahead. So